This is going to be a tough one to review. Hey there Internet, it's Fane Maka here, and I've just been to see Star Wars The Force Awakens. It's been a long time coming, and I've been looking forward to doing this review. Now I'm going to keep this video as spoiler free as possible. I will do a separate video in which I actually get into the nitty gritty of the story and really discuss what happened, and whether I liked it or not, but this one's just going to be a brief recap of my thoughts, what worked for me, what didn't work for me. Now this film's been hyped up for such a long time, it's always going to be difficult for it to match up to our expectations, and I've got to say, it kinda does, but at the same time it sort of falls short in a few areas. On the good side, the cinematography is absolutely amazing. Abram knows how to frame a shot, he knows how to put together a movie. So we've got very good action scenes, we've got decent performances from all the characters, and the effects are some of the best I've seen in a Star Wars movie. We've got to remember in this movie, as opposed to the prequels, there was a lot more practical effects going on, and it shows. There's a lot more scenes where you really believe all the stuff is there, because on some level it actually was, rather than just being completely added in a computer. The space scenes look great, the ships look great, some of the CGI characters and creatures, not so much. There's one particular scene I'm thinking of where you get to see a fully CGI character from the First Order, who just doesn't look impressive at all, looks quite fake and cartoony. But at the same time, for the most part, the effects are spot on, really nail the feel of Star Wars, make us feel like we're watching something in the galaxy far, far away. The cast performances are pretty decent enough. They get the emotion of the story across okay. There's nothing really that stood out to me as a moment that I'm going to remember in the future. There's no lines that I'm going to be quoting particularly, but I guess you got to blame that on the script itself rather than the actors. The dialogue I felt was kind of weak. Certainly there's nothing there that has the impact of some of the lines from A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back. The two main actors of John Boyega and Daisy Ridley as Finn and Rey respectively, they're doing a pretty good job in the movie. They're probably going to get steady careers after this because they are okay. They're certainly better than any performance we saw in the prequel trilogy. As for the side characters, you've got the original cast of Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and a few other minor characters such as Peter Mayhew, Anthony Daniels. They do a pretty good job with the roles that they're given. One thing I'm really glad of is none of their appearances felt particularly manipulative in any way. It didn't feel like they were just included for the nostalgia factor. They actually had a part to play in the story, and they were of significance to the plot. I mean, you could have had moments where it was just, hey, look, there's R2-D2, and he's kind of cool. But no, he actually has a significant part to the plot, as does Han Solo, Chewbacca in particular. And of course, the biggest nostalgic thing of all is we get to see the Millennium Falcon in flight again, and it just hits you right here, seeing that ship fly around, engage in dogfights and so on. It's just, oh man, it's just perfect. And of course, let's talk about the villains. You've got the sinister Kylo Ren, who puts in a fairly good performance. Whenever he's on screen, with the mask on, the hood on, stalking around all dark and evil and brooding, it's a pretty good performance. There are certain points where the performance does fall apart for him, though, for me. There's a certain point in the movie where you learn a bit about him, and once you see a particular thing, which I'm not going to spoil here, it just drains away the dignity and weight of the character, unfortunately. But that's my personal opinion. Maybe you'll be okay with it. As for the other villains, you've got General Hux, who doesn't really do much other than shout orders, and you've got Captain Phasma, who has maybe 2 or 3 lines in the movie. I really feel like that was a wasted character, considering the extra design work that went into her, and all the additional promotion she got in the advertising campaign. There's one other bad guy who appears in the movie, but I'm not going to spoil that here. That's definitely a strong story spoiler, who he is and what he does. but I didn't feel like he added much to the story. He hasn't had much of an impact yet, so maybe we'll see more in the sequels. But I'll discuss that in the spoiler section. As for the action scenes, sometimes they felt a little over-bloated. They certainly seemed to crowd out the quieter moments. There's no real moment in this movie where the action scenes take a break so that you can get time to know the characters, which I feel is to the detriment of the movie. But the scenes themselves are well done. They're fast-paced. The choreography of any lightsaber duels are pretty good. The choreography of any starship dogfights are really well done. It really does feel like you're in space with this fast-paced, high-octane action going on. And sometimes just watching this, it really just blows you away. Now, I went to see this in 3D, and I've got to say the 3D effects are really well done. Considering this is a slightly darker movie, usually 3D doesn't work so well for those, but in this case it does. When you're inside a starship, or you're looking out over a desert, or whatever it is, the landscape really feels huge, and a large part of that has to do with these 3D effects. You get the sense that these characters are just tiny, tiny parts of a much larger universe, and you're just scraping the surface. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much out there to see. Now, with the story itself, I'll say that's the weakest part of the movie, unfortunately. It's fairly standard plot. There's certain elements that are just recycled from previous movies. There's a couple of new twists and turns here and there, but nothing too much that's going to be really memorable, unfortunately. You're really there for the visuals and the nostalgic factor of seeing these characters and settings once again. So in the end, Star Wars The Force Awakens was a fun time. I certainly enjoyed going to the theatre to see it. I think it was worth the price of admission. It was worth going to see it in 3D, definitely, because those effects really do make the movie and make it a grand, large movie. This is probably the largest Star Wars movie I've seen. It feels like the largest, most significant Star Wars movie in the series. So if I had to rate this movie, I'd have to say I am quite disappointed with some of the choices they made, particularly story-wise, and it doesn't quite feel like a Star Wars movie all the way through. There's a lot of it that feels like the Star Trek reboots, feels like the two series are sort of merging together because you've got the same creative mind behind both. You've got Abrams at the helm and Bad Robot Productions, and it just feels a little too similar for my tastes, and that does drag it down for me. While I like the Star Trek movies as their own thing, I don't think they're particularly good Trek movies, but they're good movies. Same here, I don't think this is a brilliant Star Wars experience, but it's a good movie. It's an enjoyable time, and for that reason I'd rate it as a 7 out of 10. And I'd have to say this is my 4th favourite movie. Still trailing a long way behind the original trilogy, because it doesn't have the same heart or spirit that they do. But perhaps in time, once they've spent a bit more time on these characters in the sequels, then maybe I'll enjoy it a bit more. But until then, it just doesn't match up to Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, or A New Hope. But it's safe to say it's a lot better than the prequels that we had 10 years ago. So that's not that high a bar to set, but it is worth mentioning. So what did you guys think of Star Wars The Force Awakens? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments below. Try and bear in mind that other people might not have seen it yet. Keep your spoiler discussion to a minimum. Save that for when I release the spoiler video. So let me know in the comments below what you thought of the movie. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What worked for you? What didn't? Get some discussion going, and be sure to like and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more. So that's it for now. Those are my basic thoughts on Star Wars The Force Awakens. Until my spoiler video, I'll say goodbye to you guys. Maka out.